And so next we're going to turn it to Jason. Jason Webster is going to challenge us to think a little bit differently in terms of increasing our yields. So Jason Webster is the lead commercial agronomist at Precision Planting, acting as the key researcher and educator for the Precision Planting commercial team. His experience bolsters on-farm research efforts and the capability to provide solid agronomic education for dealers and growers. Jason manages the Precision Technology Institute in Pontiac, Illinois, where he conducts on-farm research on ways to help growers improve profitability. Jason is a graduate of Illinois State University, and his family is actively engaged in their family farm near Cabri, Illinois. In 2023, Jason was in his 36th year of farming, growing mainly corn and soybeans in Livingston, Ford, and Kankakee counties. And I like to think that he uses his family farm as his own personal playground to try all of his trial work. So take it away, Jason.
All right, good morning. It's a pleasure being here. We're on what we call our winter tour right now. We're traveling the country, talking with growers, sharing information about what we've learned from our research farm. And so yesterday we were in Kansas City and we were making the run back up here. We're going to go to the airport here today in St. Louis and off to Texas. But it's just a pleasure talking with growers across the country. And I know geographic areas are different, and some folks will say, well, you've got different soils than we've got on our farm, but the agronomics of growing corn and soybeans are pretty similar. And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to show you some of the things we've tested at our research farm, seen some replication, seen some consistency, and then we'll even talk about some new things, some out-of-the-box thinking, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that today. So let's talk about our research farm first. Since we're going to bring data to you today, let's talk about our research farm. It is located in Pontiac, Illinois, right along Interstate 55. It's probably 100 miles straight south of Chicago. Okay, we're about 30 minutes north of Bloomington. At this farm, we conduct hundreds of agronomy trials where we're challenging the status quo. We take the management practices that you're used to, that you feel comfortable to, and we just compare it to something else, okay? When the calendar flips to July, August, and September, we open our doors to farmers around the world. It's not just a domestic program, it's an international program. And we take farmers out to the field and we show them the trials we're working on. Matter of fact, let's go to the farm. We'll do it via Google Earth. Okay, we're right along the interstate. The last IDOT survey was done. 25 to 30,000 cars and trucks go by our farm every single day. We've got great visibility. Some folks will pull in and say, what in the world are you guys working on? And we're very open and honest. We take folks out to the field and we say, here's the objective of the agronomy trials we're working on, and then here's the data. We've been at this farm for 6 years now, and we just share the data that we've collected, and then here's the fun part. We say, what do you think? This is growers from all over the country, all over the world, and say, what do you think on your farm? Are you having the same challenges? See, because as farmers, we all have challenges on the farm, and we're looking for solutions. This farm ends up turning into an ag forum where farmers can talk together and talk about issues that they have, and hopefully we can come up with some solutions. This is kind of what we designed the farm around, challenging the status quo. The same old thinking is going to get you the same old results, and if you're not happy with the results you're getting now, we have a problem. Now, do you guys do plots or trials on your farm? You guys do that? Some of you probably do. Academia, the universities would say that you have to test something, you have to replicate it 3 times, and then you've got to turn around and do it for 3 years in a row. Do you do that? I see a lot of people going like this. It takes time and money to put these trials in and to do them right. And those are 2 things in farming we ain't got near enough of, time and money. So that's what this research farm is all about. We do the testing. I know it may not be your exact soil type and weather conditions, but we're just looking for consistency. And we're going to talk about some of that today. I like to think of this, our PTI farm. We're putting ideas into action. Now we'll go through a little example here. I want you to think about your farm for a moment and think about some things that matter to you. Everybody will probably be a little different, but think about your farm, the things that matter to you. A couple things will probably pop into your head. The things you thought of, are they things that you can control? My first year of farming was 1988. You guys remember 1988? You had the same year I did. It was a drought year, a major drought year. I grew 48 bushel corn my first year of farming, and I quickly realized I ain't got a whole lot of control on this thing. So what our farm is, our research farm, we want to look at the things that matter, but then I want to take the things that I can control and I want to live right where those two circles come together, and that's what we want to focus on, and I think that's where we're going to find yield and profitability. Look at the screen up here. Here's some things that matter to me on my farming operation. Grain prices, we talked about that today. Can you control them? No. We're very reactive to it, right? But they definitely matter. How about weather, flood, drought? I can't do anything about it. So again, we want to live right in that little sliver, and that's what we're going to go after, and that's what we do. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What are some things that we found to increase yield and profitability? Everybody always asks me, well, what did good at the farm? And we rank things. We do a kind of a top 10 list of profitability. And you'll see on this slide right here my top 10 winners from this past year at the farm. And you'll also notice on this slide you won't see yield. There's no yield of anything on here because it doesn't matter. It's all about ROI, return on investment. How much money are we making? These are my winners. Now, unfortunately, in farming, there's some mistakes that we make. And these are my losers. And you'll notice the red numbers, they get to be kind of high. Now, we were in Kansas City yesterday. I kind of showed this slide as far as losers go. What do you think about this? There might be a few Chiefs fans in maybe the building today. I really like this one. Bills kicker's not going home on the same bus tonight with the rest of the Bills player. He missed it. But congratulations to the Chief fans. I'm rooting for you here this weekend, okay? All right, so let's get into some of the things that we're learning. I'm just kind of curious. How many of you folks can irrigate your crops? Anybody? Can anybody irrigate? Exactly. I was exactly like you when we started the research farm. We had a water problem. Number one, we had a wet farm and there was no tile on it, so when it's wet I can't get water away, and when it's dry I cannot irrigate because I don't have an aquifer underneath me. I had a water management problem. And so I said, we're going to fix this thing. And today, this is my water recycling system. When it rains, I have tile in place that will take excess water away, and it will deposit through my laterals and my mains into this reservoir system, and I will recycle that rainwater in the form of irrigation. It is a really slick program. And again, I'm in Livingston County, Illinois. I don't know a single farmer that can irrigate. We don't have any water. None. And so we wanted to develop a plan to do farm drainage and then have the opportunity to irrigate as well, to take the variability out of farming, to make sure, number one, I can take the noise out of our research trials. If I'm too wet, well, I've got tile there. I'll get the water away. If I'm too dry, I'm not giving that water away. I'm holding it temporarily, and I'll turn around and irrigate, again, to get consistent data. I also wanted high yield as well. When we started this research farm in 2018, it's just like you folks, when you buy a new farm or you pick up a new farm, you got to farm it for a year or two and figure out what's wrong with it so you can fix it. And I quickly realized we had no tile, no field tile on this farm. And I said, why? Well, we've got the interstate on one side of us and the city of Pontiac on the other side, so there's no outlet for water. So that's why there was no tile on the farm. However, if you look at elevation, this is what I called my prairie pothole. And some of you folks probably have this on your farm. It's an area of the farm where when it rains, water stands. You can't get that water away. Even if you tile it, there's no outlet for it. And I said, well, if we're going to get drowned out areas in this area of the farm when it rains, let's just make it bigger and make it hold more water. And that's what we did. We brought the excavators in, and I just started digging a farm pond. Some of you guys are looking at me kind of weird, like, what are you doing? This is the area that would help hold water. So I took the topsoil off, set it aside, used it for another project, but we dug this thing 17 foot deep, and then I started using tile to fill this thing. It's ended up being about 2.5 acres in size, 17 foot deep. This is big enough to drain and feed an 80-acre parcel, okay? We did that for a reason. And you see my white pipe up here dropping water. That's how we fill this thing. That's all water. That's rainwater going through my tile. Look at that water. It's the cleanest water you'll ever see. We fill over the top. We can fill this reservoir up, and I'm going to hold that water for dear life. Most people with their field tile, where does that water go? It goes to a ditch, then it goes to a river. For us, it goes to the Vermilion River, which is about 1.5 miles down the road. The Vermilion River meanders around, and it goes to the Illinois River. Where does the Illinois River go? Mississippi River. Where's the Mississippi River go? Yeah, now we know where all the water's going. Guess what? My water doesn't leave the farm. I put it in this reservoir and I hold it for dear life because I know in June, July, or August, Mother Nature's not going to give me a rain when I need it, and I got it right there, and I pump back out, and I can irrigate with it. Now I can put tile in because this is how I'm going to fill the reservoir. We've got tile 30 foot. We've got some down even to 15-foot pattern tile, but they're all connected to mains, and we fill this reservoir up to maximum capacity. Here's some of the, we're doing some ROI tests, and I went to my tile man, and I said, hey, what's the ROI of putting in, for example, 30-foot or 40-foot or 60-foot pattern tile? And I'll never forget this. The tile man said, Jason, we just get paid to put the tile in. We never get any yield data, so we can't give you any ROI. I said, well, I think we probably ought to start doing that then. And so we've got different systems in to evaluate this, but at the same time, we're getting water for our irrigation later on in the season. I am not an overhead pivot. I am drip irrigation. We're using about a third of the total water as an overhead wood, but again, I don't have excess water. I've only got what the pond can hold, so I have to be somewhat conservative, and this allows us to do that. Some of our systems are right on top of the ground, so when you come to the farm, you can see it, because if I bury this 14 inches deep like it's supposed to be, you're farmers, you're like me, you got to see it, touch it, feel it, and see how this thing works, and you can do that. You can pick this tape up, see it dripping water, and if you got a little cut on your finger, you may feel the burn of the fertilizer and putting through that drip tape in the form of fertigation. It comes along with the ride, and it works really nice. Here's our irrigation/fertigation results over, I guess, 2019 to 2023. This is all dependent on rainfall, how much rain you get. These numbers go up when rainfall goes down, and vice versa. We've got some drip tape underneath the ground. This is permanent. This is going to last for about 25 years. At least that's what they say. We're going to evaluate this. We have PVC system. We just pressurize this all the way around it. Look at that tape right there. It's 14 inches deep. What does that mean for tillage? Can you do tillage once you put this irrigation in? Well, you can, but you got to stay above 14 inches. So you got to be cognizant about compaction. We don't want to make compaction because a lot of you folks, if you make compaction, some of you folks will say, I'll just bring a deep ripper in and I'll go fix it. You cannot do that in this situation. Now, we got this idea from Walmart, believe it or not. We farm right next to Walmart in Pontiac, and when we started farming the farm, I kind of looking around the farm, driving around it one day, and I saw Walmart there, and they got this pond on the other side of the building. I said, what's Walmart got a pond for? What do you suppose they got a pond for? Water retention. When it rains, water comes off the parking lot and goes into this pond. And so I walked into Walmart one day, asked for the general manager, and I said, hey, I'm farming this farm right around you guys. Could I borrow your water out of the retention pond to irrigate my corn and soybeans? And they gave me permission to do it. We've been pumping out of this thing ever since. But we use this as our trial run of trying to do this, and it worked out very well. However, I learned a valuable lesson from this. This time of the year is kind of a challenge with this Walmart water. What's happening right now with the weather, thinking about the parking lot and the water quality coming from Walmart? Yeah, salt. So when it snows, you got a contractor that's blasting salt on the parking lot. The weather warms up and it melts, and guess where all that salt goes? Right there. Then I come in June, July, and August, and I'm pumping that water out. That water's got salt in it. You guys ever been to the ocean? You ever gone to a family vacation or something and jumped into the ocean? You're in there swimming around for a couple hours and say, man, I'm getting thirsty. Well, you got all that water around you, just take a drink. Salt water, how's that work? It's the same thing I got going on with my crops, and so this was a valuable lesson for us. I was so excited about irrigating my corn and soybeans, I forgot about that part of it. But this worked really well and really set the stage up to make our man-made reservoir that we just talked about earlier. Now, some of you folks will say, I don't know if I want to do a project like this, but I'll tell you, if you've got tile that you put in, one of the things that we're trying to look at is can we put blockers in, basically gates to backfeed water into the tile to irrigate. And here's just some tile numbers. This past year, it was a very dry April, May, June, and some folks say, well, you don't want to put tile in when you're dry because you won't get any yield on it. Well, I don't know if that's true. Those are some pretty good yield increases with 15-foot and 30-foot pattern tile. Look at those yield numbers, too, at the very bottom. Being able to bring that recycled rainwater back in. Those are some awesome yields that I want to protect. Here's the years to payback right now, 2 years. This will be our 3rd year with this system, and right now we're at 11-year payoff for both of the lateral systems here. But get this, I've got these gates I can put in. When it rains, I'll let the excess water go, but then I can shut the outlet off and say, you know what, the water ain't gonna go nowhere now. You're gonna stay in the field, and then the soil's ability to pull that water from the tile will allow me to irrigate. And I didn't know if that was going to work. You know, that's called soil capillary action is what that's called. Some soil types are better at it than others. But I looked at it and said, I'm putting the tile in anyway. Can I do this, which this is the least cost of anything that I have? Will it make the tile pay for itself faster? Here's some of the laterals we put in. These are every 15 foot and 30 foot to understand the water movement between the laterals. You know, they're overhead there. And look at this. I mean, I'm picking up extra 13 bushel of corn by backfeeding the tile. And some may say, well, Jason, that's not a huge yield increase. But you take that times the price of corn, that's $70, and I'm just adding in to paying for the tile. My 30 foot, the yield does go down, which tells you that maybe the water can't move as much through soil capillary action, but that's still contributing another $40 to ROI. I showed you earlier, 11.3 payoff for the tile. With the backfeeding, that gets me down to 7.5 years. And we're chipping away at this thing. I'd like it to be half. That's my goal, 50%. Now, we're going to talk about something that we've only presented. Well, you're the second group, I guess. We had a mission at the PTI farm this year to make our own nitrogen at the farm. Okay? And some of you guys are looking at me kind of weird. A nitrogen that is potentially organic and naturally safe to the environment. Because the ponds that I showed you for our irrigation and fertigation, some folks will come to me and say, Jason, you're trying to grow 400, 500 bushel corn. You're probably putting a lot of fertilizer on, especially nitrogen. Are you letting any nitrogen get down through your tile and then get into those bodies of water? Anybody thinking about that? Did you think about that when you saw those ponds? Yeah, that's a great question. We're monitoring this. Anybody want to know the part per million? The maximum part per million of nitrates you can have in drinking water? Anybody know? 10 part per million. Anything over 10 part per million, they say you're killing babies. We test our water every 30 days. The calendar flips. We're testing the water. We've never been over 10 part per million. But one of the things I kept thinking about was, well, wait a minute. Maybe we could make a nitrogen product that could feed our corn, but maybe it would be environmentally friendly as well. And since I'm making it myself on the farm, I could save a little money. Wouldn't that be good? You think about one of the biggest expenses you have on your farm, it's nitrogen, right, for corn? What if you could eliminate it? Now, anybody ever heard of the hydrogen car? The guy that invented that thing, what happened to him? He's dead. He got assassinated. They looked at, the people in the auto industry and all that, said, that's a competitor, and we want it gone. And so this past year, we've been trying to make this nitrogen, and my team tells me, they say, if you see black SUVs pulling into the driveway, you better run. And I'll tell you, all summer long, we had fertilizer manufacturers come to our farm during our field days. And, I'm not that dumb. I can figure out who they are. We start talking about this thing, and all of a sudden they're getting their phone out, they're videoing me, they're taping me, they're taking pictures, and they're calling their boss. Because we've got some folks worried here because there's a lot of companies out there that sell nitrogen to you, and they make a boatload of money off of you. And I have this thing, they mentioned in the introduction, I've been farming 30-some years, and I just struggle with the fact that all of our input prices, they want to allow us to make like this much money. They're going to take as much revenue out of the circle that you're generating on your farm, the pie, if you will. Everybody wants their cut, their slice. And they're going to make it so you've got this much left over. And I think it's time for a change. And so I want to make a nitrogen that not only is environmentally friendly, safe to use, but I can make it effectively and I can save money on the farm. Okay? This is it. This is the first unit we brought in. Now, we're going to go through a little example here, okay? I want everybody to bear with me a little bit. I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and I want you guys to do something for me. I want you to take a deep breath like this, like that. Everybody on board? Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Did you smell nitrogen? Did you smell it? No, but think about the atmosphere. The air that we breathe, is there any nitrogen in it? Yes, how much? Almost 80%. Well, oh my gosh, why are we buying nitrogen to put on corn when there's 80% nitrogen in the air? It's your turn. So the fertilizer company can make money. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah. But it's not in a plant usable form. So I'm going to tell you a little story. We got a research farm going, and we're setting our recycled water up to irrigate with, and I wasn't quite done yet, but I've got corn growing in the field. I've got all my drip tape laid down. I'm ready to turn the water on, but it's not quite ready. And so along the road, I've got fire hydrants because I'm next to the city of Pontiac. And I said, well, I can't pump water out of the pond yet. I wonder if the city would allow me to take water out of the fire hydrant to irrigate my corn. They said yes. And so I got this big 3-inch line, and I got water coming like crazy. It's treated water, right? City water, and I'm irrigating corn. It's hot, it's dry. I wouldn't say total drought yet, but it was dry. Corn was suffering. We gave it the water. It was doing okay, but it wasn't responding like I thought it should have with normal irrigation. And I thought, is it just the city water or what is the deal? This went on for about 10 days, almost 2 weeks, and finally I got a rain. I got a 2-inch rain, and all of a sudden that corn greened up, and it looked beautiful. That was the response I was looking for from irrigation. And I said, what's the difference between rainwater and city water? Nitrogen in the air. Now, what happens is, and I learned this, I didn't know this. I went all through college, no one ever told me this before. And I just realized this past year. When it rains, okay, it's raining, we're getting a nice storm. When you get lightning, boom, you get the big lightning strike, right? That combustion by the lightning will actually convert that nitrogen in the atmosphere to a plant usable form. Did you know that? I did not know that either. And I said, why can't we reproduce it? Ladies and gentlemen, that's it right there. You got an air compressor on this thing that's going to bring in all the nitrogen from the air, and those power heads, you can see 2 of them, there's one in the back. That's my lightning, if you will. Non-thermal combustion here, that when we do this, we're going to add the heat to it, and then I spray it down with water. The water then goes in the tank down there at the bottom, and we've got a 60% nitrate nitrogen product. And by the way, it's salt-free. You guys that use UAN, 32% or 28% nitrogen, if you would roll up your sleeve and take a bucket of that 32 UAN, and if you got a little cut on your finger and you stick your hand in that bucket of 32, what's going to happen? Oh, it's going to sting. It's going to burn a little bit. What's that sting from? The salt. There's no salt in this product, which opens up the opportunities for a few things. Number one, do you think you could apply this product in furrow with your planter now? Yes, because it will not burn the seed. We can also go foliar. We can spray on top of corn. This could change the game in a lot of different things. Now, I mentioned environmentally friendly. This is nitrogen from the air. And so all summer long, when folks came out and they saw this machine, we'd put it on a forklift, we'd raise it up, and I'd open the valve on that white tank, and I'd take the hose, and I'd spray it all over the ground. And people would say, oh my gosh, you're taking nitrogen and spraying it all over the ground? And I said, well, it's going to get better yet. I took the hose, I opened my mouth, and I drank it. People were like, oh my gosh, he's drinking nitrogen. Yes, I did. I did it every day for about 9 weeks. It's a totally healthy product. So again, my ponds that I have, we're testing for nitrates. It's a bad thing if I get that commercial fertilizer in, but this one, if it would leach and get in the water, I don't think it matters. Think about that. Here's some of my corn that I applied. I mean, this was the thing. We had to go to corn and say, will this thing actually feed corn, right? And our mission was to disprove it, to say that this thing didn't work. And so we had an engineer, the precision planting, we got all these smart engineers. And one day we had a meeting with some of these engineers. We took a break and we go out in the shop, and one of the engineers says, hey, what's that noise I hear running in the shed? And I said, that's just my homemade nitrogen machine. He said, what? He said, let me see this thing. So we go back and look at this thing, and I never really thought about it. This engineer did just come to us to precision planting from Purdue University. He's a doctorate, and he specializes in nitrogen. He looks at this machine, and he says, Jason, he gets his calculator out, his phone, gets the calculator, and he punches some numbers, and he looks at me, and he says, Jason, I mean, he was kind of mean when he said it, too. He said, Jason, do you know that, there's probably some nitrogen there that you're making, but do you know you'd have to apply 250,000 gallons of this stuff on a per acre basis to remotely give any small amount of nitrogen to corn? I said, well, I hear what you're saying, but tell me why. This corn right here, I put 70 gallon of this stuff on, and my corn is the greenest corn you've ever seen in your life. I had numerous comments on the farm this year. I said, boy, your yard looks really nice. Your grass looks nice and green. Guess what? Homemade nitrogen. Had to mow more often. That was the only challenge with that. But look at this. One side of this graph, or this slide, is commercial UAN nitrogen. The other side is my homemade nitrogen. This is actually organic corn, because I said, let's go to the organic corn first, because with organic corn, what's approved for nitrogen? Manure, that's it, that I know of. And I said, if this is going to work, let's go right to this market, because that could be huge. Now, when I first started making some product, it went into the tank, and I put it in a container, sealed it up, and I sent it off to a lab to get tested. I said, show me how much nitrogen's in here. And I went to the post office, and I mailed it off, and the next morning I'm getting out of bed, and I said, that was probably not a smart thing to do, sending that sample off, because I knew what was going to happen. The results were going to come back 0 nitrogen. Why? When you send a nitrogen sample into the lab, what are they hunting for as an indicator for nitrogen? Salt. That's exactly right. And it looks like water. It tastes like water. And so we've gone to numerous labs. All of them have come back, Jason, there's no nitrogen in here. But I showed you my picture, my corn. It's actually feeding my corn. We can take these little vials, these little strips, these test strips, and we're going to do this starting next week as we travel to these meetings, but we're going to have these test strips on the tables, and we're going to encourage people to take your drinking water, take these strips, put them in the drinking water, and when there's nitrogen on the strip, it'll turn cherry red. And so obviously drinking water, it won't change red because there's no nitrates in it, but we're going to pass out these little vials of our homemade nitrogen, put these strips in, and then you'll see it light up like a Christmas tree. We know there's nitrate there, but we don't know how much, so our job is we live in this bell curve world where we have to rate test everything. We have to put just enough on to tell us it's not enough, just enough on for the sweet spot, and then what's too much. I've got to develop that with this product. So I said, let's go to the organic corn first. As a matter of fact, the data I'm going to show you, there's no other corn data, as far as I know, in the world for this particular product. We said, let's go and replace nitrogen. We're going to do it in organic corn. And I'm going to walk up here to the screen. I'll never be certified organic because I'm always bringing in our normal commercial program to compare it to, so I know the difference. But my commercial, or my normal program, I'm making 267 bushel corn irrigated. And I said, all right, let's shut the nitrogen down. Let's not put any nitrogen on. And I lost 100 bushel to the acre doing it. Did I need nitrogen? I needed nitrogen. I lost 100 bushel. I bring this homemade nitrogen in, and look how the yields, they came up. Now I'm still down. I'm trying to figure out this rate thing, where I need to be. My rate had to go to, let's call it 200%, the far right column, and it actually was beating my commercial nitrogen program, which was 32% nitrogen. It beat it. How many years have we been doing it? I just got her going in June this past year. Which is why I'm saying I don't want you to go do this on your farm, because I need more time to test this. I do. No, I don't. Remember, he's on it. Academia, 3 years, multiple replications. I got to get that yet. So we're not recommending anybody go out and try to do this yet. I want you to watch and see how we're using this thing, and then maybe we'll learn. Okay? Now, look, I've got a 15-gallon foliar on this. Can you guys take 32% nitrogen and spray it on top of corn that's waist high? Well, you can, but you're going to burn it. Very first time I put this product in my Hagee sprayer, got it set for 15 gallons to the acre, and I'm ready to hit the master switch on the joystick, and I can't do it. Because normally you'd burn corn. And finally I got the nerve up, I hit the button, and I'm spraying, and I said, oh my gosh, what is going to happen? The only thing that happened was I had the greenest corn in the county. Totally green corn. And I said, you know what, this organic corn doesn't excite me very much. I'm not really interested in it. Let's go to commercial corn. And since we got the machine up and going June 1st, that meant I already had corn in the ground. I already had corn up out of the ground. And I had a base nitrogen program of 140 pounds on. And I said, I'm just going to come in and replace the side dress with this homemade nitrogen. And here's what happened. When I didn't side dress, it's a base of 140 pounds, didn't put any additional nitrogen on, I lost 62 bushel to the acre. When I side dressed with my homemade nitrogen that we made in the shed, yields, I mean, they were within 5-6 bushel of commercial N. Really no difference in the rate. Made about $50 an acre, which is really interesting because that's one of the things we stress at our research farm. What can you do on your farm to make an extra 50 bucks an acre? We talk about that a lot, and here's one right here. I think this could get better though, because the cost of my nitrogen, my 32% nitrogen that we bought in, locked in last year, was 88 cents a pound. That's $3.12 a gallon for 32%. The machine that we will have in place running next week, matter of fact, we're going to have 2 of them running, my cost to make this stuff is 4 cents a gallon. You know what that means? That's a 99% reduction in nitrogen price. So that's to make it. That's to make it. Now get this. Right now, I don't know all the specifics on cost and all this, but I do think buying the machine and you doing it yourself in your shop, it's going to take about 250 acres to pay for itself. It's going to make some people mad. I think good. I think it's, yeah. I think making a little tension in the marketplace is going to be fantastic. Yes. But we need to test this more to determine if this thing works. But right now, we've seen some really good results from it. At Precision Planting, I'm excited about testing this thing in multiple different ways. On the planter, for one, I mentioned that before. We have planter attachments that you can apply starter fertilizer next to the seed in the trench. And farmers will ask us, hey, can I put nitrogen in the trench? What's the answer that we've told them in the past? No, we can't do that. And now I've got to circle around and say, yes, you can. Foliar applications. I think we're going to replace the water in every application that we have. So more to come on this. But you are the second group we've presented that to. Not too many people know about it. Yes, sir. Well, how much electricity? I don't remember what the total was. That's where I came up with my 4 cents. I'm plugging it into the wall. That's the water and the electricity. That's where my 4 cents is, yeah. Not very much. Bad reactions with chemicals? No, we have not seen any. We will continue to test that though. The only thing we've seen from the machine, there is a little bit of electrical charge coming from the machine. I can charge a Milwaukee battery if I get it within 10 feet. So we got to work. We have to ground them. We have to ground them, and I think that's the only thing we need to do. This product can freeze as well. Something to think about. You're going to have it inside. It's not going to hurt it to freeze, but your tanks and things like that could be a challenge. All right, let's go to another one. One of the things that we're working on is I got a kick out of the first session with Matt talking about carrying the market and things like that because we just put up a new on-farm drying and storage system that came in about $90 an acre net revenue gain. This is our system. Now, Precision Planting is owned by AGCO, and I started looking at the different family members of AGCO, and I noticed that GSI was a member of the family. And so I made a phone call to GSI one day, and I said, hey, you guys got grain bins and dryers. What do you think about putting some bins and a dryer up at the PTI farm? And I asked that question out of selfishness, just so I could, store my grain, dry my grain, what have you. GSI's answer was, oh, that's a pretty good idea. We'll think about it, which meant no, right? Very next week, Eric Insodia, the number one man, he's CEO of AGCO, was at our farm for a meeting. We got done at the end of the meeting, and I said, Eric, I elbowed him a little bit. I said, Eric, what do you think about putting some GSI grain bins and a dryer up at the PTI farm? And he says, that's not a bad idea. I'll make a phone call. 1 week later, my phone rings from GSI, and they said, Jason, what do you think about putting grain bins and a dryer up at the PTI farm? And I said, I don't know who came up with the idea, but it's a good one. The rest is history. We got this system running for the first time this year, and I had some questions. Yes, I was selfish about this thing, but I did have agronomic and economic questions. One of them being, is this phantom yield loss real? You guys ever heard of phantom yield loss or invisible yield loss? Is it real? I wanted to study that. I also wanted to know what harvest moisture is going to make me the most money. Because I know you guys are like me as a farmer. I don't want to pay anybody to dry my corn. I want to let it naturally dry down in the field. Anybody ever thought about that? I see some guys going like this. What is the most economical harvest moisture? Phantom yield loss, does it happen? Did it happen? Yes, it did happen. I got in my first harvest moisture at 27% corn. I wanted at 30, I never made it in time. The corn beat me. Started at 27. 254 bushel dry land corn. I let it dry down to 24. I lost 2.3 bushel. Marginal yield loss, right? I let it dry down to 20. Now I'm at 7 bushel losses. I let it dry down to 18, which I wanted it to be 15, but the corn wouldn't go there, and I wasn't patient enough to wait, and I said, all right, I'll go 18. But I lost 11.5 bushel. And then, by the way, this is an average of 4 hybrids. 4 hybrids in this testing. Which harvest moisture was most economical? Well, it depends if you're taking the corn to town or not, letting them dry it, or you're doing it on the farm. Let's say you're hauling it to town. 24% corn made me the most money. I lost $4 at 27%, which I didn't think was that much. But my big losses, letting it dry down to 18%, which everybody always told me, Jason, let that corn dry down. So you don't have to pay all those drying charges. Well, did that actually work out very well? It did not. What about drying it on the farm? I got a dryer now, and how does this change? My highest moisture of 27% actually made me the most money. And if you let the corn dry down to 18, now I'm losing some significant losses of about $26 an acre with the dry corn. So there was a phantom yield loss at our farm. What about shrink? Everybody know what shrink is? When you take wet corn to the elevator, they got to take the moisture out of the corn to figure out how much dry corn you got. Purdue University's done some studies, and they said if you got 15% corn, the shrink's actually 1.176%. But when I take my grain to the elevator, they charge me 1.4. What's the deal with that? Is this a grain handling fee that no one has told me about? I think it is. I want to know why. You guys ever thought about this? I want to know what it is, and I want to know how much it is on a per acre basis. Carrying the market, they talked about that in the first session. I don't know, this is our first year with this thing, but this is going to be interesting, looking at selling on price rallies, because again, I'm not giving up possession of the grain. I've got it on farm. Premiums, things like that, I want to evaluate this. Let's just go drying. Can we dry corn? This is the new quiet dryer. You can't even hear this thing running. This was a lot of fun to run this past fall. But can I make any money by drying my own corn versus letting somebody else do it? Here's my drying cost. I don't know what you're paying at your farm, but my local grain elevator, closest to PTI, this is what I'm paying for drying. 27% corn, I'm paying 31.5 cents a bushel. And you can see it go all the way down to 18. I dried the corn with propane. I'm propane. We'll switch to natural gas. This will get better next year. But with propane, I got it down to $0.015 a point. What does that mean? I made $30 an acre by drying my own corn. All in, all out, which by the way, the shrink thing came up about $3 an acre, which was a lot less than I thought, but I still don't understand why I'm paying the $3. I think it's half of a patronage dividend that some of these elevators are paying. That's probably what they're looking at too. Only got to pay half. Phantom yield loss was only $6. Now remember, I didn't harvest all my corn to dry corn. I was at some of these higher moistures, so when that happens, the phantom yield loss dollar amount will go down. All in, all out, I'm a 13% return on investment. Is that good? Well, hold on a second. I put all this data together and I sent it to GSI, our grain guys, right? And all of a sudden, red flags go up. And these grain guys are going nuts. They said, Jason, your numbers are wrong. I said, what do you mean my numbers are wrong? They said, something is definitely wrong in the math. You better go do it again. And I was pretty disappointed. I said, oh, I screwed up. And so I went back and I did the math, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And my numbers matched every single time. So I called GSI back. I said, what are you guys all worried about here? What is wrong with my math? And they said, Jason, there is no way in the world you're drying corn for that amount right there. I said, what do you mean? That's what my elevator charges me. And so I went to 4 grain elevators, and these are all 4 of them on this line graph right here. The bottom 3 graphs are the 3 closest grain elevators to me in Pontiac at the PTI farm. And you can see what they're charging me for drying. Then I left the great state of Illinois. Matter of fact, and I went to an ag cooperative out in South Dakota, and I looked at their drying schedule. That's the top line. That's the yellow one. And now I understand what GSI was talking about, because apparently, depending on where you're at in the country, drying costs are quite different. And so now all of a sudden my 31.5 cent drying at 27%, you go to the northwest part of the country, they're paying about $1. And if you look at GSI sales of grain bins and dryers, guess where the majority of sales are at? Do you think it's in Illinois and Indiana? No, where do you think it's at? Iowa, Minnesota, South Dakota, North Dakota, because of the cost of drying. So I reran the numbers, and now my $30 that I made at the PTI farm now turns into $100 an acre drying corn, and the 13% ROI escalates to 23%. Either way, both of them are good, 13%, 23% ROI. Look at your 401k retirement. Look at your stock portfolio. Would you take a 13 or a 23% win? I think I would too. So cost of the drying, so $1 million. $1 million. Yeah, so this is a system set up for a 1,500 acre corn farmer. Yeah, drying all the corn and then storing whatever you can, which is about 140,000. We tried to make it a real scenario, a farmer going out and doing this. Absolutely. That's where I'd calculate my 13 to my 23% based on that total cost, because it's real. Well, using South Dakota, that's like a 4.5 year payoff. My 13% is going to be a little long, it's like 7. But I don't know. So I always say this to farmers. I mean, we talk about with planter technology all the time. They say, oh, Jason, that attachment for that planter, that's kind of expensive. But the goal is of this equipment, I'm going to put it on my planter. I'm going to put it to work, and it's going to make me money. Does everybody understand that? It's like the stock market. You're not going to buy a stock because you want it to lose, right? I want it to win. I want this stuff to go to work for me. That's how I think we're going to win here. Now, the phantom yield loss we talked about, if you use South Dakota drying charges, there ain't no such thing as phantom yield loss. Look at this. That's why they let corn dry down to 18%, because they can't afford to dry it. Taking it to town, there is no such thing as phantom yield loss. We do have grain view on the bins, which I didn't know what to think about this. This is where I can monitor bins. I don't know how you guys do this at home. We had a grain bin at home. My dad was drying corn. He's like 70-some years old, and I called him from the combine. I said, Dad, how's that dryer working? He said, well, son, he said, corn's coming into the dryer at 19%, and it's coming out of the dryer at 19%. And I said, well, Dad, that's not exactly drying corn. And when you do this, how do you monitor the quality of that grain in the bin? And so we got this system, and one night, this is a little video, one night I got home from drying corn. It's almost midnight. 11:53 was actually on my phone. And my phone goes off at me and it shows me this picture of the grain bin. It says, Jason, you got corn that's almost 90 degrees at the top of this bin. And I said, there ain't no way. There ain't no way. I dried that corn right. There's no way that I've got a quality issue. And so I'm laying there in bed trying to go to sleep, and it was bothering me. I said, I got to go look at it. So I got out of bed, got dressed, and I climb up into this bin. And you can just feel the steam and the heat coming out of this corn. It was, in fact, hot. And I said, I made a mistake here, and this thing caught it. And so I went down to the fan, turned the fan on, went back home, went back to bed, came back 6 o'clock in the morning, and my numbers, look at this, all came right back down to normal. So we had the right weather where I could bring the air in to cool that and take care of the situation. But I wouldn't have known about it, and I would have had some rotten corn on the top of that bin. Yeah, it would have been a real problem. So technology is actually working good. All right, one last topic, and this is where I get into trouble. Anybody grow a cover crop on their farm? Anybody? Oh, you put your hand up fast. You did. Let me just start the conversation off by saying this. I am pro cover crop. Okay? I'll also say this. I'm tired of getting yelled at about cover crops. Okay? So I'm a farmer. But just like you guys, and it's PTI farm, I get farmers coming to us saying, Jason, will you grow cover crops, test it, and see if it works? But we're not going to do it just for 1 or 2 years. This is a 10-year program where we're trying to figure out how to implement cover crops. And this cover crop thing's getting worse because of the carbon thing that came up earlier. You know, you guys can put a cover crop in, someone's going to pay you, for the carbon part of this thing. And a lot of farmers have never done this before and say, yeah, I'll go do it. It can't be that hard. I want to share with you our experience. Now, I'm strip till at the PTI farm. We like strip till, but should tillage affect your cover crop program? It definitely could. If you're conventional tillage, it's going to be hard to implement covers, right? I plant my covers after harvest. I let them come up. By the way, this is cereal rye, 50% blend of cereal rye and barley, because that's what my local seedsman that sells the cover crops tells me that I need. Right, wrong, or indifferent. We go plant it, comes up out of the ground, and then I plow right through it with my strip till rig. And I'm going to plant into that nice black strip right there. Should make it a lot easier with this cover crop thing, right? Now, weather. Does weather have anything to do with cover crops? Absolutely. This spring, April, I received 34% of my normal rainfall. It got worse in May, only 20% normal rainfall. In June, I couldn't buy rain. And consequently, we had corn that was burning up. It looked like this. Look at this. I got replicated strips of cover crop out in my field. And you can see I terminated the cover crop. I've got my corn in there, and it just looks terrible. This picture was taken the last few days of May. You'll notice the drip irrigation. We started irrigating corn the last few days of May. I've never done that before. I've never had to. What do you suppose happened here? I planted that cover last fall, basically, right? And when it came up out of the ground, as soon as it came up out of the ground, she's sucking water. She's using water. Those are little straws, sucking water up out of the ground. The problem is I never had any left over in the springtime when I put the corn in. I had enough moisture to get it up out of the ground. But look at the difference where I didn't have the cover crop. You can see the replications. That corn looks gorgeous. And I know I wasn't the only one that had this. I had farmers calling me saying, Jason, I got this cover crop out here. I got corn that looks like it's going to die. I want to tear it up and replant. And my question to them was, you got enough moisture to replant and get the corn up out of the ground? And most of them said no. So I said, I don't know that I'd rip it up. We tried to irrigate to save it. We helped it, but we lost 43 bushel of corn to the acre. Take that times the price of corn. Add in the cost of the cover crop. Does anybody sell cover crop seed? Anybody in here? Anybody? I got one guy. Dude, you're a genius. You really are. You're the one making money on this thing, right? Kudos to you. Good job. I got to pay you for the seed, right? And I got the bushel loss, so I put all those numbers together. I'm telling myself, well, Jason, good job. Congratulations. You just lost $277 on a per acre basis. Want to do it again next year? And my answer was no. And I know it was a bad year because of the drought. I'm a 10-year program. This will be our 4th year coming up in 2024. So I said, well, let's go back and look at the other years where we planted a cover crop. One year, there was a 0 bushel yield drag. I did okay on it, I guess. The other year, I picked up 4.4 bushel. But I will say this. I got to pay for the seed. I got to pay for the fuel in the tractor to go plant this stuff. And I've never made money with it. I've lost money. I always tell people this. At the PTI farm, on my desk, I got a piggy bank. And on the belly, on the side of the piggy bank, in the belly of the pig, it says cover crop. And if you lift the piggy bank up and you shake it, there ain't nothing in it. It's empty. Because I've had to write a check out to cash flow this thing the first 3 years. Now, I'm excited about this. You're probably thinking, why is this guy excited? He's been losing money on this thing. How many years does it take to get a cover crop to work for you? To increase soil health, does it like a flip of a switch just happen after year 1? No, and so I'm waiting. I'm trying to be patient with this thing because it's cost me some money, but I'm waiting to see the transition and tell the story of how long it takes to build soil health and get some of the benefits from cover crops. Soybeans were just as bad. You know, we started harvesting beans in our cover crop, and the yield monitor is saying 91 bushel to the acre. And I'm smiling. I'm saying, I got this thing figured out. I'm going to plant cover crop. I'm going to put beans in it, and this is where this thing's going to win. Problem is, I got out of the cover crop area, and the beans were going 102 bushel to the acre. Consequently, I lost 11 bushel times the cost of beans and the cost of the program, and I lost about $200 an acre on this. Now, I will say this for you livestock guys. This is where it all changes. Because there's a value proposition here that I can't have on my farm, or at least I haven't in the past. You build that grazing into this, and all these numbers change, and probably gets me on the positive side. Okay? Now, we implement some strip cropping at the farm. Look at this. This year we grew 400 bushel corn using strip cropping. I'm going 10 feet, 4 rows of corn, and then I leave a gap of that same 10 feet. And we've been putting soybeans into the gap, but the problem is the shading effects from the corn on the beans give us tremendous yield loss. So I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get rid of the soybeans in my strip, corn, and I'm going to put cover crops in here. And during the season, once the cover crops get about this size, I'm going to bring livestock in and I'm going to graze during the months of June, July, and August, right next to that corn. Here's some of our wider strips, 40 foot. Got them east, west, north, south. Look at this. When we do the strip cropping, look at the wings of the planter, the outside edges of our corn next to the beans or cover crop. Look at the yield increase. It works. It does. It's just kind of a pain in the butt putting it in and managing it. The problem is beans. See the soybeans being shaded? That's a problem. Do soybeans like sunlight? Yes, they're a photosynthetic crop. They are. They like that. But we're shading them. This year I had the largest decrease of soybeans. Look at this, 17 to 20 bushel. We harvest the centers versus the outside wings and huge losses. And I said, I'm tired of it. I'm not growing soybeans in these strips anymore. And so I said, let's go cover crops. I've been challenged by cover crops. We're going to make this thing better. I've got them out here in these strips, and I'm going to graze them. And this year we brought an autonomous livestock facility into our farm to graze the cover crops between the corn rows. This thing's autonomous. It's supposed to move by itself with GPS. We've got sheep up in the front. We've got chickens in the back. We had some goats in here. I'm telling you, it was a real circus out here. But we're rolling this thing down through the corn to graze the cover crop. Now, in reality, why did I want this system running through my strips? What are those animals doing for me? That's exactly right. They're giving me fertilizer that I don't have to pay. Well, I guess we kind of paid for them. We had to feed them a little bit, what they couldn't graze. But they're giving me that free fertilizer because in these strips where this thing's running, that's where my corn's going to go next year. And that's where my 500 bushel corn's going to be in the future. At least that's what I'm telling myself. If I can't grow 500 bushel in that scenario, I'll never do it on any other portion of the farm, in my opinion. I don't think I will. There's our sheep out in front. They're just mowing. They're my lawnmowers of that cover crop. Grazing, and they're depositing as well, right? And then we've got chickens in the back. I put meat chickens back here because they said you can grow a crop every 8 weeks, send them off to the butcher. Remember, I don't have soybeans in these strips, right? I took them out, so I got no bushels to sell. I got to replace the income. So I said, let's sell a chicken. 20 bucks a chicken is what I put on these things. I mean, come on, they're organic. We donated these to the food pantry is what we did with them. For the feasibility study, I used 20 bucks a head. Huh? No, I let the butcher do that. But get this, a neat little story though. We went to the food pantry. I called them and said, I'm coming. I got all these birds, frozen birds. And I got there, and this lady comes out and with her little clipboard, and she's writing it. She's like, oh my gosh, you got a lot of chickens. She's writing this thing down, and there's tears in her eyes. And I said, well, did I say something wrong or what? She said, sir, in our food pantry, we don't have any meat. We got all kinds of other food, but we can't get meat because it's perishable. So it's kind of a neat little thing. I said, you know what, we're gonna do more of this, and all the livestock we're gonna get from all the meat is gonna go to the food pantry and donate it. It was a neat little story. But we're gonna continue doing this. Manpower-wise, this was a lot of labor. It was. I mean, I had staff at the farm that wanted to quit. They're raising their hands back there. I got them with me today. Yeah, I'm glad they're still with me, but there you can see it from the back side. But this thing just moves right straight through my corn. Look at all that extra sunlight that corn's getting, and then all the extra manure that we're putting on, and it's not commercial fertilizer that I've had to pay a lot of money for. All right. I'm going to blast through a couple of these so I know we're out of time, and I'm the only thing standing between you and food. You can follow along with some of the things we're working on. There's Twitter or X, Webster Ag. You guys can follow along. We post this stuff from time to time, and if you're so inclined, we'd love to have you come to the PTI farm in Pontiac. It's not that far from here. Actually, we'd love to have you this summer. So any questions on anything we talked about before? Oh, I get that question a lot. So who funds this thing? Why would Precision Planting want to fund this thing? Because we're just trying to find solutions to problems. I mean, no one's funding this thing other than Precision Planting. Now, we've got the farm. We'll harvest the bushels. We'll sell those bushels. That's income right there. But there's a lot of cost to it for sure. Yeah. My labor costs, I've got 3 guys that are working with me right now. Yeah. Yeah. It's a 400-acre farm, and I've got 4 guys, including myself. Yeah. Say it again, sorry.
That's a lot of bin for 400 acres.
Yeah, it's pretty, yeah. Any other questions? The nitrogen thing we're working on, stay tuned on that. I think it's fascinating, and there's some good things that are gonna come with that, yeah. Yeah, how far out is that? I need one more year of testing. Granted, it'll only be our second year. We'll have more soybean data as well. But the thing we're going, just like in Kansas City yesterday, I went to growers and I said, I'll make you a deal. I said, if I can make enough of this nitrogen at the farm, I'm going to package it up. And I don't care if you're a naysayer or not, I'll send you some free of charge. I'll send you some. But you've got to put a trial in like I'm doing at the PTI farm, replicate it, and then we'll compare notes at the end of the season. You're a different soil, different climate than me, and we'll just compare it. Yeah.
How many acres of nitrogen will you produce with that machine?
One machine, we think, will do enough nitrogen at 100 gallons to the acre on 500 acres. I was just on the phone this morning with some of the engineers, and it looks like that may actually be doubled. And that would take my cost of making this from 4 cents a gallon to 2 cents a gallon. It's incredible. The whole year, 12 months.
Yeah, you run it all year?
Yeah, you run it 24/7. Yep. How much does it cost? Anticipated somewhere in the neighborhood of mid-30s. But how much do you spend on nitrogen on your farm? Now, granted, that's for 500 acres, we think. I still have to rate test this. But that is a huge ROI. And get this, I never mentioned this earlier. If the EPA finds out about this nitrogen product and it is in fact environmentally friendly, what would the EPA say to you, Mr. Farmer? You are using it. Think about that. There could. The carbon program, that is a huge number that will be associated with that as well. We're still trying to work on this. It's very interesting. Oh, one other thing. The organic side of this. I went to the organic side. We went to Omri. Does anybody grow organic corn or soybeans? Anybody? We went to Omri and said, will you approve this? Because this is nitrogen from the air. This is an organic product. They said no. They turned us down. Want to know why? There's not enough money in it. They said it's costing you 4 cents a gallon to make this stuff. We can't even test it and make a profit on it to approve it. And I said, well, you've just answered my question about the whole organic thing. It's been out there. It's all politics, and it's a farce. They're all about, having these environmentally friendly products and safe for the human body. But they're going to decline it and say, no, you can't use it because they can't make any money off it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just straight politics. And I will stay away from politics from here on. Yeah. All right, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks.